All right, you guys. Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Good
Um, I
morning.
believe that the screen will pop up when it's ready for just to share the slides. I hope that everyone's having a good morning. Good thing it is a late morning, so hopefully got everyone got a good enough amount of sleep. My name is Mandy Sabata. I'm with Lioness Justice Impacted Women's Alliance. I am the Director of Leadership Development, and I have the privilege of being with these two ladies today. If y'all would introduce yourselves and let them know how we've came to be.
Sure. My name is Felicia Miyakawa. I am the president of the League of Women Voters of Williamson County. For today, I will be representing statewide League of Women Voters, just so that everybody gets the same information. This information is going to be all about Texas, the whole state of Texas. We wanted to have this conversation with y'all because Anita and I do a lot of work in county jails, and we know that there's a whole lot of people out there who do not know their voting rights, and we want to make sure that everybody has all the information they need to make the most of their power.
And good morning again. My name is Anita Overton, and I'm the Voter Services Coordinator for the League of Women Voters in Williamson County. And I definitely agree with everything Felicia says. We're excited to be here. We're excited to share our knowledge and information with each and every one of you. So thanks for being here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you too for being here. And I'm really glad that we were able to connect because I think this is one of the most important things that people take for granted is that our vote is our power and our voice. When it comes to democracy, and we want to make sure everyone is utilizing their power and their voice, and we're going to teach them how today. And so I'm really grateful that we were able to connect, and I'm also very grateful that y'all take the initiative to go into the county jails. I believe, Miss Anita, you were telling us about how y'all had went into Williamson County just recently, or if one of y'all want to share of y'all's experience.
Yeah, we went yesterday into the Williamson County Jail to register voters who are eligible. We also take information from one of our partner organizations called Vote Riders, and they offer help with getting state issued IDs. And that is super important for a whole lot of people who are inside right now. And so Anita and I are part of that team, and I also go with a team in the Travis County Jail at the Del Valley complex, and we've done 2 visits so far this spring, and we'll do 1 more before the deadline. Sorry, this fall. I don't even know what month it is anymore.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Life is really, really crazy.
Yeah.
Yes. And I'm sorry, Mandy, I'll also add that it was super exciting because the staff was very, very supportive of us. And there were so many of the individuals that we had an opportunity to talk to that were interested in voting, interested, engaged, involved. So we're super excited to see that as well.
Yes, I love that. And was anyone surprised that, like, especially those that are in pretrial or have yet to be convicted, that they still had the ability and right to vote? Like, how are those conversations going?
Yes, the folks pre-trial are surprised, but also folks who have prior felony convictions, but who are off paper for those convictions and might be inside for a variety of reasons, they have the right to vote as well. And that is something that a whole lot of Texans do not know. That law changed over 20 years ago, and still, even the correctional officers that we've encountered, they were like, wait, I had no idea. And they're actually excited to share that.
Yeah.
So that's really good news.
Yes, no, I love that because I remember hearing when I first found out about that, it was like, and so many people are silenced in there and we don't even know it. So I do believe that we're a little 4 minutes after 11 now. Let's go ahead. Are y'all able to see the slides from y'all's end?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. If you want to go ahead, we can start with this first slide. I hope that everyone is ready. We've kind of already gone through our names, but if you want, you can introduce the ladies that are on that picture if you know them personally, or we can go to the next slide. Just let me know if you'd like to start, Felicia.
Yeah, we can go to the next slide. That's a photo from National League. So they are likely photos of ladies in DC. So I don't know them personally. Okay, so the next slide. We wanted to start with some terminology today, just so that as we go through the details in this presentation, in this discussion, we want to make sure that everybody has this shared vocabulary because we want to know what we're voting on when we do go to vote. And even if you're not yet eligible to vote, you can still be involved at these various levels. So just as a quick review, we have three main branches of government. And those are laid out on the slide here. The first one is the executive, and you can think of this branch as the branch that enforces the law. You might think of that as a sheriff, for example. And in fact, the sheriff is part of the executive branch at the local level. But this is also a good example is president of the country. So that's your executive level. And then there's the governor of the state. You might even think more locally of your mayor, your city mayor. That's also in the executive branch. So most of these are elected, but there are some positions within the executive branch that are appointed. And we can't do anything about that. So then there's the legislative branch. This is the branch that makes laws. And that happens at a variety of levels. So I should say it makes laws and policies. That's another important distinction to make. So in DC, we have legislators who legislate, they make law. At the state level, we have legislators who legislate and make laws that govern Texas. And at the local level, we have like city council that will make policies that affect your city. And all of those are things that affect whatever is in their particular fiefdom, shall we say, or their area that they control. And then the final branch is judicial. And this is the branch that interprets the law. So any judge you've ever encountered, right? And that goes all the way down to justice of the peace and all the way down to all the way up to the Supreme Court of the United States. And we have a Supreme Court of Texas. The Supreme Court of the United States is appointed, but we actually get to vote on the Supreme Court of Texas. And that happens in November, some years, not every year. So we actually get to have input in that. But think more locally about criminal courts and civil courts. There's a whole lot of judges in between those positions that are actually elected positions, and they can have a big impact on our lives. I don't want everybody to get really hung up on all of these details. Like, don't feel like you have to memorize this. The really important take-home message is that we get to vote on positions in every branch of government, So that's super important because you have that much power when you go vote. Next slide, please. Some more terms to clarify here. I was talking about, Washington, D.C. and state and local, and this is another way to think about it. If you think about where people have their meetings, So if we talk about federal representatives or people that we elect at the federal level, they have their meetings in Washington, D.C. So that would be people like our state senators, our U.S. senators, John Cornyn and Ted Cruz, for example. They are our current senators who go to Washington. We all have a congressperson who represents us and has their meetings in Washington, D.C., the president, the vice president. And I want you to think about the number of people I just named there. That's only 5 people. So typically when people think about elections, they're thinking about federal elections, and that's only 5 people. You have a lot more power in the other elections. So we want you to really pay attention to the elections where you have a lot more at stake. So then we have state, and they have their meetings in Austin. So these are people who represent us, who are having their meetings in Austin, like our Texas state representative, our Texas senator, and lieutenant governor and attorney general, and on down the line. Next year, we're going to have huge elections with a lot of those positions on the ballot. So those folks meet in Austin. And then you have municipal, or you can just think of local elections. And those meetings are going to be whatever's local to you. So I live in Round Rock, for example, and my mayor and city council, they meet in Round Rock, right? Because that's what they're in charge of. If you're looking at a commissioner's court and the county judge, which is like the mayor of a county, they meet in your county seat. So in Williamson County, where I live, the county seat is Georgetown, and they meet at the courthouse in Georgetown. So that's a good way to think about it. It's just, where do they have their meetings? Where do they do their business? And that can help you sort out the levels of government. I invite you all to write down this phrase, who represents me? And later you can Google that and you're going to get some information. You'll get a page that gives you Texas information. You can type in your address and it will tell you who represents you at a whole bunch of levels of government. It doesn't go down to really local or at the municipal level, but you'll get a good idea of who represents you at the state and federal level. And you can start there if you're not familiar with these names. Okay, next slide, please. So I'm talking about voting. That's what I've been phrasing this as, is you have a lot of power when you vote. But I would really invite you to think about two different kinds of civic power. How can you use your power in your community? So one way is through what we call constituent power. When you are a voter or when you are in a district that somebody represents, you are that person's constituent. And you have the power of being able to vote if you're eligible to do so, or to hold them accountable. And I want to be clear that you can hold your representative or your mayor or your whatever accountable, even if you are not able to vote yet. You can always call an office. You can always send an email. You can always go to city council meetings or to county commissioner's court or the state legislature. But calling is great and emailing is great. All of those things tell our representatives or the people who are working for us, whose salaries we pay, we are holding them accountable for the decisions they make. And of course, the most obvious way to hold them accountable is to vote. So if you vote them into office and you're not super happy about what they're doing, you have the power to then vote them out of office. So as a community, we can do that. Individuals, we can do that. We also have community power. And I know y'all already know about community power because you were involved in Lioness, right? And that is a great example of community power, a group that works together with shared goals to achieve something in the community. A lot of us are in, we in the League of Women Voters, we're working on this locally, and we also work on it at the state level, but you can do this wherever you live. So work in your community to speak out at meetings and elected officials. And again, you do not have to be registered to vote yet in order to use this community power. And I would encourage everybody to use this power as much as you feel comfortable doing so and as much as you're able, because you are the only one who has lived your life. You are the only one who has had your experiences. Nobody else can tell that story. Nobody else has the same power you have. So we will be better as a society once we have everybody using that community power. Next slide, please. Okay, so we've reviewed the kinds of civic power we can use. And now we all often get this question of, yeah, but I don't really feel like my vote counts. Like, why do we even do this? What is even the point of voting, So I want to put a couple of ideas in front of you. Think about the judges, for example. Judges, man, you can vote on judges. I talk to a lot of people who get super excited when they find out they can vote for DA, right? Like a DA and sheriff. They're both elected positions. Think about that. This screen says all Texas judges have been elected since 1876. That's huge. That's huge, right? So there's a reason for that. I don't know what that reason is, but let's do that. Let's make sure that we have a voice in our judicial system. Your county commissioners, if you are voting at the county level, if you're involved at the county level, those are the people who decide on budgets for jails. Those are the people who decide on the budgets for elections to make sure that we have voting booths in all the right places in our community, right? So those people make those county level decisions. You want to make sure that you can trust them. I'm also thinking about the floods that we had in July, for example. In Williamson County, part of our county was really badly affected, and y'all might live in a county that was badly affected. We were looking to our county and city elected officials for the response. How are we going to get out of this? How are we going to support each other? And it's people at that level of government who are your first line of defense. You might think about state officials. You might be very, very aware that the minimum wage right now is $7.25 an hour, and it's been that way a long time. That's a federal minimum wage, but states and local communities have the power to change that. Maybe you're not convinced that it should be higher, whatever. People have different ideas about this, right? But that's the level of government where people are making those decisions. Elected officials at many levels, but especially state and federal levels, make decisions about sentencing. And as I'm sure y'all know, justice of the peace, they work within certain parameters, and then they have a little bit of wiggle room for their own determinations, right? So all of those people can have a direct effect on our lives. Next, please. This is another thing to think about, is that usually when we vote, we're voting for people, but not always. Sometimes we're voting for issues. Sometimes we're voting for ideas, right? So this fall, for example, we're voting directly on amendments to the Texas Constitution. Every eligible voter in Texas will have to say in whether or not these things are going to be added to the Constitution. Sometimes your cities will put things up for you and say, do you want to do this or not? Should we fund this? You get to decide that directly. So it's not just people making the decisions for you. You get to weigh in on this. Also, your school districts will often say, we need funding for this building project, or to upgrade the HVAC, or, you know, we need new computers, or whatever it is. They're going to send that directly to the voters, and the voters in that school district get to decide. Community projects like parks, right? Do we want a new green space? The voters of Williamson County just a couple years ago voted on, yes, we want this new big community park. So we're getting this great big community park, and the community was very much in favor of it. So that's another example. So sometimes people and sometimes issues and ideas. Okay, now the voting reality, because it sounds good to talk about, oh, everybody's going to go out and vote. Yay, we can have a big say. And I want you to understand that it's only the people who show up and vote who get to use this power. We have a whole lot of people who get excited that they're registered to vote. And we get excited when we register people to vote. That's super awesome. But that power ends there if people don't actually go use it and vote. It's not just enough to be registered. You have to actually go up and vote. Yeah, thank you. That was perfect timing. I just want to put some data in front of you for the math nerds out there, which does not include me, about how many people actually vote. Now, these are results from most recent elections. In Texas, you can see on the left hand of your screen that almost 40% of Texans who were eligible and were registered to vote, almost 40% of them did not vote in the big election that was last fall. Now, I can understand some people were like, I don't want to vote in this presidential election. There were a lot of people who were like, whatever, I'm just going to sit this one out. But there was a lot more on the ballot. There's that federal stuff all the way down to local, probably school boards, lots of judges, right? So every time you skip an election, you're missing out on voting on all of those local things that can affect you. And then sometimes we have local elections that only affect your county or your city. It's usually like city and school boards. And I want to give you just an example of Williamson County data, because that's all I've been playing with since I live here. And this is kind of disturbing to me because on the one hand, for the federal election, we're upset that only 40% of, or that almost 40% of people didn't show up. But in Williamson County, in our last local election, almost 95% of people didn't show up. Only 5% of people showed up to vote in that election. We're talking about school boards in some cases. We're talking about city councils. We're talking about people who have really important roles in decisions that affect you every day. So this is your pro tip, is that if you want to have the most power, you go and vote in these local elections, because not many people know about it. So you're going to have just that big of an outsized voice. And again, we want everybody to be involved in this process. Okay, and that's, again, Williamson County, but you can do a little digging on your election site for your county and see how that compares. We tend to be pretty good in terms of voter turnout, so I'm guessing you're going to have kind of similar results. Next. All right. This is a little blurry, but this is probably one of the questions that a lot of you are asking right now, is that how do I know if I'm eligible to vote, if you've had any kind of interaction with the legal system? So the easy way to think about this is that if you've ever been convicted of a felony, you have to be off paper, and then you can re-register to vote. And let's break that down. Off paper for these purposes mean you are done with all probation or parole. You're done with all time that you have to serve. There's still, if you still have some fines or fees, that's okay. So that's, other states say, no, you have to pay your fines and fees still. That's not true in Texas. So off paper, no probation, no parole, everything is done. So once that's done, you can re-register to vote. We're going to have a phone number for y'all in a little bit because we are not lawyers. So there's a whole lot of complexity in the system, especially when you get into deferred adjudication or different kind. There's so many complicating factors. We want you all to talk to somebody who has some legal knowledge if you are not sure what your status is. And so we're going to give you that phone number in just a couple minutes. Okay, next slide. And at this point, I'm going to turn this over to Anita for a few slides, and she's going to tell you more.
Thank you, Felicia. That was a wealth of information. Now we're going to talk about the general requirements to register to vote. So first, you must be a U.S. citizen, must be at least 18 years old, and have not been declared by a judge to be mentally incompetent or unable to vote for any reason. Most importantly, you have to register to vote. And you must not have been convicted of a felony. And if so, you have to be off paper. One of in Felicia's previous slide, she talked about a number because we are not attorneys and dispositions can be complicated. So I want you to write this number down. Voter assistance, 866-OUR-VOTE. And there's also a number in Spanish. We work with a number of partners who will be able to look at your specific situation, your specific case, and be able to help you work through that to determine whether or not you're eligible to vote. Next
Anita,
slide.
let me also add that if you just Google 866-OUR-VOTE, if there's another language that you need, there are dozens that these folks are able to help with. So it's not just English or Spanish. If you speak Arabic, there's somebody who can help you, for example. There's lots of languages.
That's a great point. So just write down that number because it has just a wealth of information, and somebody is going to always be available to assist you. So how do you register to vote? It's important to realize that Texas, unlike other states, does not have online voter registration. So you can go into the local county elections office in your area. You can register in person. You can also go to a public library in your area. Libraries have trained staff to assist with voter registration. They can help you complete the application. They can review it for applicancy. They can't determine eligibility, but after the application has been completed, they can turn it in for you, or they are responsible for turning it in for you within 5 days. You can also contact us, the League of Women Voters. We're always willing to help. We have about 33 chapters throughout the state. You can contact us. You can contact one of those local leagues, and we will be happy to try and get somebody out to help you. And you can also go to votetexas.gov and click on register to vote. In this instance, you would need to print out the application from home or wherever you have printing capabilities, fill it out completely, and then mail that application in.
Anita,
Next
could
slide.
you please clarify how far in advance does somebody have to be registered before an election?
30 days in advance.
So for this upcoming election, which is November 4th, the Secretary of State has decided that October 6th is the last day. So everybody has to have their applications in by October 6th. If you're mailing it, just keep that in mind.
Thank you. So once the application has been completed, submitted to the elections office, and they've processed it, within 30 days, you'll receive a little we call it a voter registration certificate. It's a little card and it's similar to this, or it's going to look exactly like this. And it's going to have in the left-hand corner at the top, it's going to have your county clerk's or voter registration contact information. It's also just below that, it's going to have your voter unique ID number, your precinct number, and the expiration date of your voter registration certificate. And the unique ID number, we call it VUID. It's specific to each voter. So that would be your specific voter unique number. At the bottom of the certificate, you're going to have your name and your residence as recorded on the voter rolls. It's also going to have the mailing list, your mailing address, which may not be the same as your county of residence.
Meaning it can be different. Yeah.
They can be different. Then also on the right hand corner, you're going to have the districts that represent you, which is important because it's based on your county of residence. It's going to include your congressional representative, your state senator, your state representative, your county commissioner, the justice of the peace, school board, city council district, and your school board of education. Or your school district and your school board of education.
And nobody is ever going to ask you, do you have this memorized? No, none of us memorize all this stuff. It's just when you have that card, it helps you if you're interested. Hey, I forgot what congressional district I'm in. I want to look up who is my congressperson. You can go back to this card and you can find out, oh, look, this says US Rep 23. And so I know that I can contact my representative who is the Texas US representative for District 23.
Next slide. And many people may not know this, but your voter registration certificate is a legal form of ID. And you can utilize that to apply for SNAP benefits, for TANF benefits in general. And it's also supporting documentation to help you apply for your state ID or your driver's license. So within 30 days, like I said, you should receive your voter registration certificate. Sometimes it may not come, sometimes it may be a little longer, but if you don't receive it in 30 days, you can either go to votetexas.gov, pull it up and to check your registration. You can also contact the local elections office to confirm. And also when you go into the polling location, it's useful to have this certificate, but it's not mandatory. Okay, next slide.
Okay, I think I'm taking back over here. Is that right?
That's right.
All right, now, so now you know why you should go vote, how that gives you power, right? And now you have a better idea of how to go register to vote if you're not already registered, how to find out who represents you. So those are important. One of the most difficult things in terms of voting is just knowing when elections are, because unlike other states, Texas has at least one election every year. Apparently, we love voting in Texas so much. We do it every year, sometimes twice, sometimes 4 times. It's super exciting. So you get a chance to use this power all the time. You just have to be looped into when it's going to happen in order to know to show up, right? So I'm going to give you a little calendar stuff here so that you can start thinking about it. There's no test or anything like that, but just helps you get thinking about it. When we go and talk in high schools, I tell them, I would like you to get this tattooed on your forehead. There's at least one election in Texas every year. So far, nobody's taken me up on it. So this fall, okay, November 4th, the election this fall is on constitutional amendments, which means that when the Texas state legislature met last spring, there were some things that they did not want to decide on behalf of the voters. They decided, let's put it on the ballot this fall and let the voters decide whether or not we want to change the Texas Constitution. So that's what's on the ballot this fall. It reflects what happened in the legislature in the spring. And in the odd numbered years, every odd numbered year, you can expect that that's going to happen. we'll have constitutional amendments that reflects what happens in the legislature. Some people are like, I don't know, that's not okay. That's power, you guys. It's the Texas Constitution. It's the Texas Constitution. So we get to have a say on what's in there. Then in some places, you're going to have a little extra on that ballot. So for example, if you happen to live in Houston in the 18th Congressional District, you will have a special election this fall to replace the late Sylvester Turner, who was congressman from that district. He died last spring, and they haven't yet filled that position. So that's going to happen in November. Here in Williamson County, in the city of Leander, we have a special election for city council, right? These are very local. So you'll have to do a little research to figure out what's on your ballot, but we'll talk about that in a few minutes. All right, next spring in March, we have primary elections for two of the parties. You'll notice that, you know, we usually have like Green Party candidates and Libertarian Party candidates on ballots. Those parties are not part of this primary process. So the March primary will only be for the Democratic and Republican parties. Now, currently in Texas, we have what's called an open primary, which means you can vote for whichever party you want. You just decide, I'm going to vote in this primary, I'm going to go vote in this primary, and then you go and vote for those candidates. And the purpose of a primary election is basically to choose your fighters for the big boss match in November. So whoever wins these preliminary elections in March will then go on to the final elections in November. So it's like a pretest, okay? Then in May of next year, a whole bunch of local elections. So most places do their city elections then. A lot of school districts do their elections then. So you can vote maybe 3 times next year. It's so exciting. And then next November, we have what are called the midterms. So we have presidential elections, and then 2 years after a presidential election, in the middle of the president's term, which is why it's called a midterm, we call everybody back and say, let's have a big old election. And next year we'll be voting on our Congress critters and on governor and lieutenant governor, a whole bunch of state stuff. So there's going to be a lot of power, lots of judges next year as well. Okay, we're still gonna talk more about this. So next slide, please. Again, there's no test. Don't freak out here. So this just gives you an idea of the different kinds of elections we have in Texas. There are so many different kinds. And the good news is the League of Women Voters is here to help you through every single kind of election. We are always doing educational programs locally and at the state level to help people understand what's on the ballot. So just looking at this chart, you can see the presidential election, as we know, happens only every 4 years, right? And that's the one we always hear about. That's the one that gets all the press and all of the ads and all of the YouTube, whatever, right? It's everywhere. So the midterms happen in between the presidential elections. Primaries are always held before both the presidential and midterms. So in those even numbered years, we can expect primary elections. We sometimes have a special election, and that's usually when somebody dies or resigns. And that's what's happening with that congressional district, District 18 in Houston, because we had a congressperson who died in office. And it just happens to align with the statewide election. Municipal, you can also think of that as county and city. Those are usually in May, but they might be in the November election, depending on where you are. And then we're back to the constitutional amendment election. So you don't have to memorize these. Again, just get in the habit of thinking that there is an election, at least one election in Texas every year. You can count on November and probably May. Now, where do you get your information about elections? So the League of Women Voters is very proud of our tool, Vote 411. Those of us who are old enough might remember that 411 was the number that we dialed for information, right? Kids now ask us, like, why 411? We have to explain to them about rotary phones and the whole 9 yards, you know. So you can just use this address, vote411.org, and it will ask you to put your address in, kind of like what it looks on the screen there, the personalized voting information. You put your address in, and it's going to tell you what's on your ballot. So it doesn't tell you everything in the world. It just tells you, hey, voter, you live in Round Rock, Texas at this address. Here are the things that you get to vote on. Now, I'll tell you that there are some places in Texas where we don't have leagues that represent those counties. And in those situations, you might not have a lot of local information, but you will always have statewide information. Okay. And so the best thing is, if you can, plant yourself a league in that county, and then we can get that local information. All right, Anita.
All right. Thank you for that, Felicia. Now we want to talk about different ways to vote. First way is in person. We can do that during early election days or on election day. But it's most important, let's just get out and do that. Let's just vote. You can also go vote by mail, but there are some stipulations regarding voting by mail. As listed below, you have to be age 65 or older, disabled, pregnant and due to deliver within 3 weeks of election day, out of the county for all of the election, or currently incarcerated, not convicted, or in an institutional setting.
So that can be like you're in a rehab center. That can be you just had surgery and you're going to be in the hospital for some weeks. You know, there's all sorts of possibilities there. You don't have to check all these boxes. You just need one.
Yes, just need one. And you decide where and when to vote. So in many counties, you can vote at any open polling location. So that means you can go anywhere. You can go, anywhere that has an open polling location, you can go there and cast your vote. You can also vote early. That's the same ballot. It's the same process. The benefit of voting early is that it's always shorter lines. So you're in and out. The polls are usually open from 7 to 7 on election day. And during early voting, they're extended somewhat from 8 a.m. to about 6 p.m. on many of the early voting days. In order to find your voting place, you can go to votetexas.gov or your county's election website, and that will give you indication where specifically you can go and vote. Because this year, particularly in Williamson County, several of our long-standing polling locations have been closed. So a lot of people have been in the habit of going to those places, but they're going to find out that it's no longer a polling place. So that's why it's really important to find where those locations are prior to heading out. You don't want any surprises and you don't want any delays. So what will you need when voting? You're going to need a photo ID, a Texas driver's license, or a state ID. And if you have not been issued a driver's license or don't have a photo ID and can't get one by the time of the election, by election day, you can complete what is called a reasonable impediment declaration. This will be filled out by the elections office or the election workers. And so what you would do here is you could still vote a regular ballot, but provide one of these supporting documentations. And that could be your voter registration certificate. It can be a current bill, a current utility statement, a government check, paycheck, or a government document that includes your name and address. It can be the original or a copy of any of those documents. Also, can you go back 1 second? Also, if you're having any difficulty getting any of your birth certificate, your identification, we partner with a phenomenal organization called Vote Riders. They are willing and ready to assist you getting those documents. They will also assist with transportation, getting you to the polls, and they do this work for free. So make sure you utilize that resource in the event that it's needed. Next slide. Okay.
Is this me or you? You. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, that's me. So before we conclude here, here are some quick tips about voting in person. So you cannot wear non-political clothing. So it shouldn't have anything to do with any candidate, any party, or any issue on the ballot, on the current ballot. You can't use your phone while you're voting. So it's important, like Felicia had mentioned, we have our voters guides, which will be coming out sometime mid-October. You can utilize that information to help you decide on who you're going to vote for. You can write that information down, and you can take the paper copy of that information with you into the polling location and use that to help you vote. There'll also be poll readers, likely, not at all polls, but at some. There are people outside the polling place with signs or information about candidates. You can feel free to ignore them. Or you can feel free to ignore them. Another thing that you're going to find oftentimes at polling location are what is called poll watchers. They're looking for irregularities at the polling place or specific to the election. In Texas, a poll watcher is appointed to observe the conduct of the election on behalf of a candidate, a political party, or proponents or opponents of a specific measure. Poll watchers cannot converse with the voter. They can observe when an elections worker is assisting a voter. They can observe that. However, the voter can always decline. The voter can always say, no, this is private. I don't want you. I don't want you there.
And if you have any trouble when you're voting, those election workers are there to help you. They're getting paid to help you.
Yes.
So they're happy to do so.
Yes. So just remember, you can always decline. If you run into any issues at the polling location or at a polling location, we also have a election protection number, 866 Our Vote, where you can contact them directly with any issues, any concerns, and they will definitely address those concerns or attempt to address those concerns expeditiously. Next slide.
The very last thing, that I want to say about this is that democracy is great and all, but then when you go vote, you get a sticker, and stickers are the best, right? You get your sticker, and then you show off and you go everywhere. Like, I make sure I go vote on a day when I'm going to be out in the community, so I can be like, look at me, I'm important, I voted. Like, we want that fun for everybody. These are just some contact information. We gave you a good email to reach us here in case anybody wants to. And the League of Women Voters of Texas is absolutely thrilled to answer any questions that you might have. If you have disability-related questions, you can call Disability Rights Texas. So there are lots of resources here. And that 866 Our Vote number is the same one we have been sharing all along. That is all sorts of lawyers and legal people who are standing by to help you.
Yes.
And that's it. That is the presentation.
Ladies, y'all did such a great job. I absolutely loved and learned so much from y'all. I loved how there was so much more empowering things that I didn't really think about when it comes to local elections. And I really appreciate that knowledge. I hope that others that were watching kind of were empowered knowing that their vote is their power and their voice when it comes to being a part of this democracy, and that we have to protect that. And so I'm very grateful for y'all. And if there's anything, if y'all want to do like a little recap really quick, maybe someone just caught the last little bit of it. Felicia, if you want to go ahead and do that, I'd hate for anyone to miss anything.
Sure.
I do know we're recording this and it will be available on different websites.
Sure.
However, let's just touch a little bit of bases right now.
Sure. So big picture issues. Voting is important because it is your power. but you still have power even if you're not yet eligible to vote. If you've got a felony on your record and you are still on paper, don't worry. Your voice is still very important. We want you to be able to talk to community elected officials, state elected officials. They need to hear what you have to say because you have a unique voice in your community. So take advantage of that community organizing and reach out to your elected officials. And deadline for registering to vote for the fall election is October 6th. If you miss it, don't panic. We've got at least 3 elections next year. So, and there's at least 1 election every year in Texas. We want everybody to know that one.
Yes. I also loved something that you said too, is it's not only about voting. So if you are organizing, it's also about accountability. And I
Yes.
think that's a point that people don't always understand. When we're upset about something that's happening, that's where we need to step in as a community and hold our representatives accountable. And
Yeah.
that's something that anyone can do. And I thought that was very empowering when you shared that part of it too. And we always
Mhm.
think that we're victims or we're just kind of going with the flow of whatever the big man says, but they work for us. Who pays that paycheck?
They work
Exactly.
for us. Our tax dollars go to
Exactly.
support their salaries, right? And so if you are living and breathing, you are paying taxes. So know where those taxes are going and be confident about, yes, I'm happy with this or I'm not, and vote people in, vote people out, whatever, right? Just be involved in the process. I really like to think of voting as an ongoing conversation with your community about what you want that community to be like, right? You're building that community every time you go out to vote. And that's super important. I think we need that more than ever. We really need to be building
Yes.
those local communities brick by
Yes,
brick, right? Person by
yes.
person.
Yes, no, I 100% that people sometimes don't even recognize the power of a local organizing, local community and local, like, having to stand and stay there because that's where you live. That's gonna
Mhm.
affect your kids. That's gonna
Mhm.
affect the people next door. That's gonna affect you in a greater way, and so I'm grateful that you brought up local elections because sometimes those are just kind of, going by without even thinking about it, and
Mm-hmm.
so, again, I think this was a wealth of knowledge. I hope that, everyone enjoyed it. I think y'all did a great job presenting it, and it's been an honor to be able to collaborate with y'all. I've also been really grateful that you are going into the counties. And I think, again, that that's very important for our population and for people to know that they have the right. And so, with that being said, I think that we can say our goodbyes unless y'all have something else y'all would like to share really quick. I think y'all did a great job, and I'm really proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Delighted to
you.
be
Thank you.
here. Delighted to be talking to the Lioness community. I watch y'all on social media, and I'm just so happy to see you all in the community.
Yes, and I'm really grateful
Yes.
for everyone who was able to stop by and watch it. I hope that
Mhm.
they feel like they got something out of it, and I'm grateful for them as well for coming this morning and spending this time with us. So I hope that everyone has a great day and that y'all learned something and that we're able to continue to empower each other and make real change in the world.
Yep. Thanks, Mandy.
Yeah.